Hi, good morning. We are reading The Mystery of History, Volume 4. We're on page 251, and I want to address the elephant in the room of how tired I sound in the morning. That's because I am tired. And I've realized I'm not a morning person. But I'm awake. I'm just making it. You have to get my voice at 10 a.m. before I sound a little peppy.
Yeah, like Mama, she sounds, if you listen to her record, she sounds good, but the recording makes her sound tired.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to Chief Joseph. We had talked about, what's his name? Ohiosa, also known as Charles Eastman. And now we're moving on to Chief Joseph. Chief Joseph attended a mission school just like Charles Eastman did. But unlike Charles, Chief Joseph never adapted to this new American culture. I'm rephrasing because she's using racist language. Instead, he kept to his American Indian culture all of his days. He was a well-loved leader of the Wallam Watkin Band. They were the Wallam Watkin Band of the Shoot-Palu. The Shoot-Palu. I guess that's the name of their tribe. We know them better as the Nez Perce. That's a nickname that the French gave them, which means pierced nose. Okay, so that would mean Nez Perce or Nez Perce. Or Perce. Nez Perce. Modern uses has generally discarded the French accent and just call it Nez Perce. So the Nez Perce. The Nez Perce did not actually pierce their noses, but they sometimes wore shells on their noses as decorations. So the name stuck for the Plateau Indians, who lived in the forest and the plains of Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. Now, Chief Joseph was actually born in Oregon. The story of the Nez Perce, that's just as weird to call them that. The Nez Perce, that's also weird to say. The Nez Perce goes roughly like this. This is their story. It's about 1805, and the first European Americans, I'm not sure if they're Americans, she just calls them by what she believes the color of their skin is. Okay, no, it was Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. So we know that they are what? Americans.
Oh, yes.
So these are the first European Americans. Meet them in 1805. The encounter was peaceful. Many presents were exchanged between them. But as time went by, other European settlers, it doesn't say if they were American or not, she's just using racist language here, began to, it says, encroach upon the lands of the Nez Perce. The Nez Perce. In the 1850s, the United States asked the Nez Perce to sign a treaty that would reduce their land but give them sovereignty over what they possess. Here again, we're here at the issue of where the American Indians, they don't want to settle the land, and their view is it shouldn't be settled. They should just be free to just roam. And the United States is like, well, how about just this land over here, and we'll call that your land. And they're like, no, we want all of it. And they're like, well, we might have to go to war. So here we are again at the same issue. So it's unclear if the Nez Perce ever signed this treaty, but there is one thing for sure. In 1860, gold was discovered in their territory.
Uh-oh.
And suddenly there were a bunch of European Americans ready and wanting to settle this land.
I can just imagine them at the gates of their territory, and they're like, hello.
After the discovery of gold, the U.S. government asked for 90% more of their lands and insisted that these American Indians relocate to a reservation in Idaho.
Because they wanted that gold.
They wanted the gold. So that's not fair. If that's their land, that's their gold. Okay, you just said they could have it. Know what I mean?
Really like gold.
Wait, hold on. There's gold there? Let's just rediscuss the terms of this treaty. So,
Let's rethink our choices.
yeah, so that's not fair.
I would sign it.
But Chief Joseph refused to sign the land away or to move from his Oregon homeland. When he was sick and on his deathbed, Chief Joseph asked his son never to abandon the land or the place where the older Joseph was soon to be buried. Doesn't that remind you of Joseph in the Bible? Or what is it, Jacob? Or did Joseph said to take me with you? Because at first they buried him in Egypt. Is that right? Yeah. And then they took them when they took Joseph with them when they left Egypt. So the Nez Perce, for them, Caleb, the burial ground of one's ancestors is a sacred place. I think that's most people. You know what I mean? According, she says it's like as if that's like something new. It's like for the Nez Perce, the burial grounds are sacred. That's for most people. So, according to the young Joseph, his Joseph Sr. said, "My son, never forget my dying words. This country holds your father's body. Never sell the bones of your father and mother."
Why would you do that?
He means because the land is like a tomb for their bones. But he's basically saying the whole land. You know what I'm saying? Like all of the land holds our they're buried in this section, but he's saying because they're buried in this section, the entire land is their burial. So young Joseph, who became the next chief, agreed to defend Oregon, but he found that he could not stand up to the unceasing demands of the U.S. government. And so two things began to happen about 1877. Young Chief Joseph, who opposed war, planned an escape for his people into Canada. But as they fled, angry warriors of the Nez Perce planned for war. Warriors and chiefs like Allakut, Rainbow, ooh, I like that name, Five Wounds, and Looking Glass unleashed their fury and attacked the European American settlers. I think they're American because she just calls them by the color of their skin. Hateful. Because I noticed she doesn't call Chief Joseph the red one. So the U.S. troops under General Oliver Howard pursued the young Chief Joseph and 800 of the Nez Perce who were with him. Only 200 of them were warriors, and the rest were women, children, and elderly. The flight of them was historic, so they're fleeing, but it was historical on many levels. The young Chief Joseph proved to be a genius and has been nicknamed the Napoleon of all American Indians for the way he outmaneuvered the troops that were pursuing him. She says physically, young Chief Joseph, and I'm going to call him young Joseph, or young Chief, and his people were stretched beyond capacity. They were traveling with their elderly and their small, like children, more than 1,000 miles. That's a very, very difficult thing to do with elderly and young and little and small children. They were going through Idaho, Oregon, Montana, and Wyoming. Much of that is the Yellowstone National Park today. Emotionally, the trip was very heartbreaking as he was going against his father's wishes and moving away. According to young Chief, he fled only to prevent bloodshed is what it's called, but people dying. not just people dying in the American Indians, but also the European Americans. He didn't want any people to die on either side. He said, I said in my heart that rather than have war, I would give up my country. I would give up my father's grave. I would give up everything rather than to have the blood. Now he calls them by their color, or what he assumes their color is, because that's not really their color now, is it? Rather than to have the blood of the European Americans upon the hands of his people. As for the war, he blamed the young warriors for the impertinence. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds like immaturity, quick to act without thinking, and stubbornness, rebellion, somewhere along that line. And he said, I know that my young men did a great wrong, but I ask, who was first to blame? They had been insulted 1,000 times. So he's saying that the young warriors, that they sought revenge and they shouldn't have done that. But he said the European Americans also shouldn't have continued to provoke, by saying, we want your land, we want your land, we want your land, we want your land.
Want to give her your land?
And he's like, you told us we could have it sovereign. You told us we could have it sovereign, And now you find gold. So I like his response because it's a very mature, he recognizes there's wrong on both sides. Their fathers, so he's still speaking. He said the fathers and brothers of these men had been killed. Their mothers and wives have been disgraced, and they've been driven to madness by whiskey, sold to them by these European Americans. Okay, well, that was their decision to drink alcohol.
It was.
You can't blame somebody for, well, they sold it to us. Okay, well, you bought it and you decided to drink it. But I understand what he's saying. He's saying that there's wrong on both ends. There are times, Mrs. Hobart says, that she wishes she could rewrite history, and she wishes that she could say that the Nez Perce made it to Canada, but they didn't. They were 40 miles from the border, and they had been 3 months trying to get to Canada. It was September 30th in 1877, and they were stopped by 2,000 U.S. troops. The only way for the Nez Perce to avoid being captured would be to leave their women and children behind, but they wouldn't leave them. And so they gave up their flight to get to freedom in Canada, and they surrendered on October 5th. It's today? No, I was about to say Chief Joseph said, my heart is sick and sad. From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever. It's very poetic. The United States promised the Nez Perce safe passage back to Oregon, but instead they rerouted them and put them on trains and they spent 8 months in prison camps at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. So it's very hateful of the United States. Why didn't they just let them leave? You don't want them to have the land, so
let them leave. Then you have no more trouble trying to fight them for it.
I'm confused. I'm wondering if there's something else that we're missing here. Remember how that other story, it seemed like we were missing? Why wouldn't you just let them leave? The Nez Perce were then moved to spend the next 10 years on a reservation in Oklahoma. Then they were later relocated to Idaho, a reservation there. And Ms. Hobart says this unjust treatment is one of the darkest stains in America's past. Again, I'm wondering, so this would be something you'd want to dig into deeper, is why didn't they there must be a reason that they didn't let them leave, because if letting them leave would have meant that you could have the land, why aren't you letting them leave? In his later years, the young Chief Joseph, who's now older, met up with Charles Alexander Eastman. Charles helped young Joseph write petitions to the U.S. government, and he helped document the story of the Nez Perce. Young Chief Joseph, whose moving speeches have been preserved to this day, has gone down in history as a wise, gentle, intelligent, and unwavering American Indian. I definitely think he's wise because he recognized that there was wrong on both ends. Although that latter part of not letting them leave is, I'm like, what's going on here, U.S. government? He spent his last years on the reservation in Washington. That was still far from his homeland and the burial place of his father. A physician said at the passing of Chief Joseph that he died of a broken heart. Oh, that's sad. Okay, that's the end of semester 1. That took us a long time to get through. We're going to go on to Mankind's Hope in Christ, looking at the wars of the world from 1903 to 1945, and we'll pick back up there later. Goodbye.